Brooks, we are so excited to have you with us. And for everyone, I'm Sachin Jaiswal. I'm one of the co-founders of Kim.cc. With Kim, we are building a customer support as a service. It's a platform with which we started out to make great customer service accessible to all businesses. And and what we are providing is this is something like an Upwork for customer support, where everything that you need to run your customer support is available. You just install our app. There's a widget that will come in, and some of the tickets that gets created will be answered by an AI, and some with a human. So that's just about what we are building. I have Brooks with me, who I know for quite some time now. We bumped into him last year when we just figuring out the whole DTC ecosystem, and he's been generous enough to help us through understanding the market, the ecosystem, and without much ado, I'll ask Brooks to quickly introduce himself. Brooks, over to you.
Good to see you. Yeah, hi, I'm Brooke Singer to everyone who's watching. I am a customer service and customer experience consultant, and I'm also the director of customer service at Spiritual Gangster for the last, oh gosh, I think it's about 12 years now. And I'm really excited to talk with you, Sachin, about one of my favorite subjects, customer service crisis management. There are a lot of misunderstandings and mistakes that businesses, big and small, make during a crisis. I hope that we can, through this conversation, bring some wisdom to businesses so that when they do face a crisis, they can get out of it quickly and evenly and without losing any customers. Very, very important.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Brooks, for sharing that. So today's topic for the podcast is the significance of crisis management in customer support. And we're just going to talk about, as Brooks said, about crisis management and how, um, if done well, it can be a great anchor to delivering customer support. So I'll start with a small story uh, about a similar scenario that we went through in
Hmm.
my previous startup, Nikki.ai. I remember it was an e-commerce platform, and I remember there was a campaign that we ran, and our order volume shot up by 100x.
Hmm.
And we were not prepared for it. We are not just the fact that our order volume shot up 100x, our customer support inquiries actually went up by about 20x, and we were not staffed up for it. Um, we actually um, could not respond to our customers in time, and as a result, our Google Play Store rating of our app fell down from about um, 4.8 to 3 star, and we could not recover. Even for the next 4 years, we kept trying, but at best, we could reach 3.9 stars. So, crises like these can actually make or break your business, and customer support is your last resort to prevent a heavy customer churn during a crisis,
Yeah.
and it is also a great anchor point to deliver a wow experience with the customer. So today's topic is largely going to be centered around crisis management and how we can leverage this in driving good customer delight. So Brooks, with your extensive experience in customer service, um, you have encountered various crisis situations, right? How do you approach um, crisis management in customer support?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is it's going to be really important for leadership to bring a sense of calm to the situation. Uh, you know, I'm a big believer in when a crisis pops up, the first thing to do is to take a deep breath. And believe it or not, often do the opposite of what our heads tell us to do. In emergencies, you're hardwired to it's at the fight or flight thing, right? To get into fight and to start moving at 1,000 miles per hour. Generally, you have to fight against that instinct and stop and take a breath. And of course, that's assuming that the building you're in isn't on fire, right? It's literally like your life is in danger. That's generally not the case when you're talking about a business crisis, especially if you're talking about an e-commerce online business, right? It's usually not that. Excuse me. So, assuming the building isn't on fire, you need leadership to be calm, and you got to figure out what is the issue and what is the source of that issue, right? What I found before in crisis is that rushing things and making hasty decisions can actually make things a lot worse. So you have to really focus in a very methodical way about bringing all the parties who can help solve the issue and deal with the customers who, in order to deal with the customers who've been affected. And it almost always is a multi-departmental approach that you're going to need to take in crisis management. You may have to bring in production, marketing, tech. There's all sorts of things that may need to go. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but go in calm, take a deep breath, and be methodical about the approach. What exactly is the issue? What is the source of the issue? And who do you need to fix it? Whose opinions? By the way, it is not uncommon in the process to find out that, oh, I thought I was only going to need the tech guys, but I actually need to bring marketing into this. You may be surprised about who you need to bring into the process. And for that matter, it may be worthwhile, depending on the situation, to bring in people you think you're not really sure if you need them or not, right? So when you're gathering your resources, if there's even a chance you need to bring in somebody from the logistics team, bring them in for that first meeting where you go, okay, let me tell you what's going on, and boom, boom, this is what we've seen, and then hear all the voices about what might potentially be the source of the issue. Because you may be surprised. You may think it's one thing, but it turns out it's completely something different. So calm approach, bring in all resources, and be methodical because you don't want to make things worse. That attitude, and then of course being calm when other people are frantic, help bring them down to a more methodical and open state of mind.
Got it. Well summarized. Be calm and then try to problem solve it.
Yeah.
So, has there been a scenario where you faced a crisis like this? Can you share an example with us?
Yeah, this happened not too long ago at a company I was helping. They're an apparel company, a medium-sized apparel company, where they had just a tech issue, but because of this tech issue, a whole bunch of other things went wrong. So what happened was they did a release that was a collaboration with an influencer, a large influencer. And they did this collaboration, so meaning they did a bunch of products that were her name on it or something along the way that she then went out and marketed, and it turned out there was this one top that they got. I think it was somewhere between 150 and 200 orders for. And what happened was everybody who ordered a small got a large, and everyone who got a large got a small, and it was simply because of some type of cross, you know, linking in the back end system that caused the issue. So the problem was discovered by customer service when they were shipping out of the West Coast, right? So you have all these orders. Obviously, the orders, because it was a drop, all the orders came in within 1 or 2 days. So then you have the 3PL shipping, and obviously because they ship out of the West Coast, the people on the West Coast and close to the West got those first, and then the packages start to arrive in the Midwest of the United States and then the East Coast. So what happened was, when all the people on the West Coast got the wrong size, they started writing into customer service. And there was an astute one or two agents who started to notice that it was the same item over and over again, where the size was wrong. And then they alerted leadership that, oh my gosh, something appears to be wrong here. And they looked at it, the items in the back end channel, and said, oh my gosh, there's this cross wiring, so to speak, going on. I was cross labeling that was going on, and tagging. So once they noticed the problem, it was easy enough to fix, but then they had to figure out who it was that were either did receive or was going to receive the wrong item. And then we had to come up with a response to that issue. And the response needed to be very sensitive, because it not first of all, because it's your customer, but also because it's the very specific customer of both you and who's a fan of an influencer that you were working in collaboration with, right? So now this endangers the relationship with the collaborator. So that's obviously, you've got multi levels to this problem. And then you got to figure out how to tell people about this problem, because they haven't gotten their package yet. And they're just so excited to get their package, because this is an item that their favorite collaborator, right, is involved with. And so there's a lot of tech issue here is easy to solve, but the logistics problem and the relationship problem is a lot bigger. Yeah, you can see here. So that was sort of the biggest one recently that took place, and I can tell you how we went through it.
I would love to understand, like, how did you communicate with customers and manage their expectation?
Yeah, so this involved, and this is sort of a good general rule when you are dealing with customers in that all of a sudden there's this emergency and you've got to figure out what went wrong and how to deal with it, right? And that's the importance of what I call placeholder messaging. And placeholder messaging is, whether it's on the phone or in chat, or in email, is one where you're basically saying, hey, yes, you're 100% right. This was a mistake that we made. It looks like it may be bigger than just you, and we are currently in the process of trying to figure out what to do. And what's really important here is you then tell them the amount of time it's going to take for you to get an answer to their problem, right? And it's very important to be specific about that. I always think it's a good general rule to under promise and over deliver, right? So if I want to give myself 24 hours to figure this out, I may say 40. Give me 48 hours to figure this out, and apologize profusely. And then, of course, in the end, you'll take care of whatever the issue is, and offer some type of compensation for as such. But that will depend on a lot of different circumstances. But you want to be sure. Really, what I'm getting at is, you want to be sure you're apologizing for the situation, that you're giving a clear answer to how long it's going to take you to deal with the issue and the customer, and that at the end, that the customer feels you care about their issue and they feel cared for, and you understand that it's your responsibility to fix it, and that you're going to fix it, right? And for 99% of people, that's going to be enough. You'll always have a couple of people here and there where they're like, will complain about the amount of time. There's really nothing you can do about that, but just make them feel extra cared for. And you may say something along the lines of, I've got you at the top of my list to get back to, right? The people, and honestly, you should, right? If there's somebody who is this affects in a way that 99 out of 100 people it isn't going, it doesn't affect. Like maybe they ordered that item with rush shipping because they're going on vacation and they wanted that item to take on their vacation. Or maybe they have a big class, or maybe they're going to do a podcast and they were going to wear your gear, right? And oh my gosh, I was going to wear it on a podcast, and now I have the wrong size. It doesn't look at me. Whatever it is, um, you put them at the top of the list to take care of. But 99 out of 100 people are going to say if they feel heard and you've been empathetic with the situation and take responsibility for the situation, they'll be okay with that time period and with you getting back them. Mind you, the problem doesn't necessarily have to be completely fixed with that placeholder, but you need to get back to them, even with it's another placeholder. Like, hey, we told you we're going to get back to you in 24 hours. Just want to let you know we haven't forgotten about you. And we're still working on this issue. We expect it to be our solution to be finalized by end of week or by end of day tomorrow, whatever it is. So bring in that empathy, bring in that compassion, bring in that and own up to what has gone wrong. Very, very important to own up.
Got it. Wow. So have the empathy, bring in that empathy, um,
Absolutely.
and own up to screwing up,
Yeah.
and then
Honesty and transparency.
yeah, and just be honest and transparent with the whole thing.
Yeah, honesty
This is
and
great.
transparency is very important. Uh, I will say this just on the notion of why it's so important. Um, First of all, uh, and I've seen this before, uh, any BSing you try to do, there's a really good chance you're going to get caught. you know, um, Customers and people in general are very savvy today. And you can also assume that your customers are talking to each other, right? Especially if you have a very niche brand and you have a fan base, or in the case of we luckily there was no BSing with what we did in this case with what went wrong with this collaborative stuff. We were very truthful and transparent. Um, but you can assume there's chat rooms and all sorts of social media interaction with people, and if you fudge it at all, you're likely to get caught. So it's just a bad idea. And in your answer, if people are asking why this is going on, be accurate and clear, and don't speculate. Like if something went wrong and you don't know why it went wrong, and people are asking you what went wrong, don't guess. Be honest. We're trying to figure that out right now, and we're going to have an answer for you in the next 24 hours in the solution, or whatever the amount of time is. So, it's what I have found in my experience in these sorts of answers is that customers will latch on to what you say. And if you speculate, even if you were telling them, I think it may be because of this, they don't hear the word think. You told me it was because of this when I first asked you, and now you are giving me a different answer. Not a good look. Not a good look. Don't speculate. Accept responsibility, be empathetic, placeholders or the amount of time, and go from there. Very, very important rules to how you deal with a crisis, dealing with customers in a crisis.
This is amazing, Brooks. These are golden nuggets. Thanks for sharing these. So, coming back, how do you go about, especially if for I think what it requires to manage crisis effectively is
Sure.
to have a great team, right? How do you build a resilient team, and how do you bring in that adaptability
Yeah.
amongst the agents?
Yeah. We're going to edit my coughing out. Southern California by the beach is rarely so dry. Just like, yeah.
No worries.
Okay, here we go. So, in terms of building resiliency and building a good team, that knows how to respond to crisis, there's a few things I would say. And that starts with hiring, right? So it is a good idea to bring up crises and crisis management in an interview and ask people, agents, your potential agents, tell me about a time where you've been in a crisis before, a customer service crisis. For that matter, it could be on either end, by the way. It could be as a customer service agent and you had to deal with a crisis, or maybe you were the customer. And tell me about that experience. And what, if anything, did you learn from that? So I would actually have a culture where, in a culture of hiring, where that's part of the interview process. Um, Most certainly, make crisis training part of your onboarding for your customers. So you've hired somebody and you're going to give them all this type of training, right? Throw in crisis management as part of that. What is the SOP for an agent, for example, alerting to what they think they may be a crisis? By the way, a good idea to tell people, if you think, even if something is just bugging you and you don't think, you're not sure if it might be a crisis or not, that there's no penalty for being the person that says, hey, I'm a little concerned about something, right? Some people have that. What's that old story? The boy who cried wolf, about the kid who said that, I think the sky is falling. I hope I'm not mixing up my stories. But like who said there's a wolf coming, or I don't know what it was. The sky is falling. It didn't happen. And then when it really happened, nobody believed him. Um, so make it okay to be paranoid, so to speak, for your agents. Um, Maybe the most important thing would be to have, for leadership, to have plans in place for the most likely scenarios ahead of time, right? And if you share with your agents in the training that you have plans in place, that builds a lot of confidence, right? And a lot of resiliency in the team. And to go back to my first point about being calm, it can really help your agents become calm, right? They go, oh my gosh, this thing is happening. Oh, wait a second. I remember we talked about that in training. There is an SOP for this kind of thing or something like it, right? So, and I think, by the way, uh, those first few points are something that I see that a lot of companies are missing. They don't do it in the interview. They don't make it part of their training, and they don't have plans ahead of time for the most likely scenarios. Those are real weaknesses. One of the things I consult on, just to share. Um, the other things, you can also just run, in talking about training, run scenarios, right? Drills, you call them, so people can react accordingly. Um, a little side note here, kind of a fun story. So I used to work for, many years I worked for, before I got into consulting and the apparel business, I was in the book business, of all things, a brick and mortar. And I worked for a very, very large company that's in brick and mortar book business, also online in the United States. You could probably figure out who they are. And we used to have crisis training as part of management training for the managers in the brick and mortar stores. Bless you. And they used to do, essentially what they did is you would have this training where you ran a scenario where something would go wrong. So for example, you lost all power in the store. And okay, so what is the SOP for if the power goes out? Well, you open up what are called crash kits, where so you can keep the registers moving, right? Where you take the credit card information down by hand and that sort of thing, right? Okay, so now you've done that, but because the electricity went out, the escalator stopped, and somebody fell down the escalator. So now you have the power out, and you have a medical emergency on your hands. And then there was a middle of a transaction in the cafe, and the person was waiting for their money back, and they're getting angry that they're waiting because they're in a hurry. Right? So in other words, all these things were going wrong. And what they were looking for in this training scenario is how does the manager react? Did he or she stay calm under pressure? And did they utilize the resources available to them to deal with these issues? So my point in sharing that story is to say that you want to, in your company, you want to run these scenarios. I used to have a joke I'll share with you. I don't know, were you a Star Trek fan growing
Yeah,
up?
I did
Okay.
watch.
Do you remember the term Kobayashi Maru?
Yeah.
So, right. So the Kobayashi Maru was the test that any new Starfleet commander who was going to get a ship had to go through, before they got a ship, had to go through the Kobayashi Maru, which was the unwinnable scenario. And so, if you're a Star Trek fan, you'll remember that Captain Kirk was the only one who ever passed the Kobayashi Maru. He did it by cheating, by the way, because the whole point of the Kobayashi Maru was, in the end, everybody on your ship was going to die. So I have this little thing in my training when I do consulting called "What Can Star Trek Teach You About Managing?" And now, of course, in e-commerce management, not everybody's going to die in the situation, but it's what the commanders at Starfleet were looking for in their potential candidates to take over a major ship was, how did they react with things getting worse and worse? And the commander's going to know, hey, the end of this isn't going to look good, but I'm going to do my best and stay calm for my crew and see if I can save some lives. And so obviously, we're not dealing with that extreme in e-commerce management, but you're trying to save your customers, right? So all the things I mentioned before, making it part of the hiring, making it part of the training, running scenarios, having plans ahead of time are a good way to pass your e-commerce Kobayashi Maru.
Understood. Brooks, I have a related question to this. How do you manage stress and burnout amongst your agents
Yeah,
in such
that's a
scenarios?
great question. And I got to tell you, I'm really thrilled that you even asked, because I think that this is another area in which customer service teams and customer service leadership are not focused. And I think it's a huge mistake. So, big kudos to you for bringing it up. Um, Sorry, give me just a moment to pull up my notes on this. I wanted to make sure I got through a couple things. Okay, here we go. So, in terms of stress, I really encourage, of all things, that customer service teams and businesses in general, honestly, have built in meditation options. Meditation. I do this on a level right now with my customer service team. And then I happen to also teach meditation to the larger group. We do that a couple times a week. But you want to set up opportunities during work time outside their regular breaks where customer service agents can take a few minutes to breathe. I highly encourage meditation. We had, I remember one company I was working for years ago, the building they actually had a small meditation room that was available. They had all these nice cushions on the floor and a couch if people didn't want to sit on the floor. And there was one or two very comfortable chairs. People meditate in different ways. But meditation itself is, I think, by far the best way for people to de-stress in general, but also customer service agents. Now, that being said, there are individuals who may want to take 10 minutes, not for meditation, but for the thing that makes them de-stress. And that can look like many different things. But here's what's really important. What we wouldn't want people doing with that time is answering their own emails or text messages. They can do that on their lunch break, or and they're if they're in the US, depending on how long the shift, they're taking their 15-minute required legal break. But a 10 or 15-minute in the middle of shift, something that it about either doing meditation or some other type of de-stressing activity, that is the way to go. I have had so much success with agents doing meditation, and I'm happy to say, I feel like I've turned on a lot of people to bringing it, incorporating it into their lives as a de-stress. And, it's not only something for work, but it is to, something where it can really be a benefit to people at work. Um, so I really encourage this sort of built-in meditation breaks or break for helping really build focus and relaxation and to stimulate creativity. And as I said, making meditation part of your company culture, and you do that by leadership doing it, right? Like it's a big deal for someone, a supervisor, to say, "Hey, I'm taking 10 minutes to meditate." So that encourages the people in their departments to do the same. Yeah, and it's a really, really big de-stressor.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that, Brooks. Um, let's move to the role of technology in crisis management. Right? Um, how do you use technology here? And have you done any kind of, or if would you recommend anything, um, any kind of specific tech that would help in such crisis?
Yeah, so I've had to think a lot about technology in terms just general in customer service and e-commerce. And since we're discussing crisis management today, uh, it's a really interesting topic because I think AI, for example, can be utilized in several different ways to help identify and problem solve in crisis management. So I'll just give you an example. On all customer service platforms, whatever it is, whether it's Zendesk or Customer or Gorgias or whatever the platform is, um, each interaction gets a ticket, a reason assigned to it, right? So if everybody who's writing in about tracking their package, that ticket or phone call or chat will get identified or labeled, categorized. That's the word I'm looking for. Each interaction will get categorized, uh, tracking. And if people are writing in about a defect, let's say you sell a hard good, however the customer contacts you, then anything with defect that will be a category. So generally, companies will have 10 or 15 different categories that every interaction gets assigned. So it's very important, especially with larger teams, that if there is an unusual number in a given period of time of interactions that are categorized, that a customer service agent or supervisor, that is brought to their attention. So if you think about the example before where I talked about the women's top where the sizes got mislabeled, it was noticed because one of the reasons it got noticed is because that category, which was misshipment, was noticed there was a high number in a very short period of time. So when I think about things like AI, if you can set AI to review interactions and notice that a certain category or categories are above whatever baseline we set, that can send a message to a supervisor, hey, there may be something going on right now. Or for that matter, if your company doesn't have, whatever platform you're using doesn't have AI, well, bummer for you. So maybe you need to start looking at different platforms. But if it doesn't, and there's a way for you to set some type of alert that if there's a high number and whatever the baseline is, and, a lead agent or supervisor gets alerted, that can really help you find the problem faster, and then be proactive in dealing with the problem. It's so much better to find a problem. Look, if you can find a problem before any customers alerted you, so much the better, right? Or a smaller number, because it's always better for you to tell a customer there's a problem coming than the customer tell you that they found the problem, right? So any leveraging of technology that would put you in that scenario is much better. The other thing I would add is that it's really important to train your agents in such a way that using the technology they have in front of them, which is usually nothing more than copying supervisors on, say, emails, or flagging them whenever they see anything unusual, just for them to be in the habit, again, of sort of training them to be a little paranoid, that if they're hearing this unusual thing, let's say it's an email that they got, that in their response to the customer, they're also flagging the agent, the lead agent, or the supervisor in that interaction. So then that the lead or the supervisor can go review it and do whatever necessary steps. So making sure you're using technology to try to find issues before they become too widespread, and in tagging supervisors for in anything unusual is very, very important.
Totally agree. And in fact, that's something that we also believe in, and we therefore built this feature called Pulse in our platform
Mm,
that can actually figure out if there are issues that are happening, and then
yeah,
bring those to the surface, right? For example,
yeah,
if there's a delivery delay that is happening because of
yeah,
some shipping issue, and suddenly those issues have spiked, it'll alert you.
yeah,
In case if there is a agent that is not following SOP, it will let you know. If there are issues that have spiked because of some promotion campaign going haywire, it will tell you that this promo code is not working.
yeah, yeah,
So basically, we believe that AI can actually play a big role in preventing those issues from happening, and from these crisis situation actually bubbling. So yeah, moving on, I also wanted to quickly touch upon how do you, especially in scenarios like these, um, how do you lead with empathy?
yeah. So as we talked about before, leading with empathy is incredibly important. And that empathy with the customer situation needs to pervade all the different means of communication with customers that you use, right? It certainly needs to be shown in phone calls, uh, and it certainly needs to be shown in email and chat. So, in a crisis situation where this is what I was sort of referencing before, where you may need to bring in more teams than you think in order to deal with the situation, right? Because you need to be show empathy, but you also need to show a sense of what you're doing, and accuracy, and all the things that we talked about before. So if I go to the example that I brought that I mentioned earlier about the mix-up of the sizing, um, we realized that when we got into the situation, and we found out what was happening, we had to make a decision about how widespread we were going to go, right? So there was a certain amount of customers who ordered on those 2 days, but then the subset of that was the people that bought that specific item, right? So what we realized was, even though it was a rather large number of people, between 150 and 200 orders, compared to the amount of people that ordered in the 2 days, it wasn't very much, right? So what we knew was, we figured out very quickly was, we didn't have how to respond. We didn't have to respond on social media. We didn't have to put out a message and let all our customers know that we screwed up, right? We only had to let the people who bought this particular item made an error. So we didn't need the marketing team the social media team, but we did need a little help from the marketing team, again, because they're the leads on working with the collaborators. We did need their help in how to write a proper email and a proper chat response, and also the main points that we want to get across empathetically to the customer in the phone call, what we would say, what we wouldn't say, and how to speak to this particular group of customers, because they are customers who are fans of that collaborator, right? So we brought them into the fold and said, in talking with this particular group of customers, what language is different than we would normally use in our normal interactions with customers from everybody else.
Yeah, Brooks, could you give us a share any personal experience where actually using empathy has was instrumental in navigating a crisis?
Yeah. Oh, let me think about that for a moment. Um, Give me 1 second. I think I have a note on this of something I wanted to share. You're talking about with customers, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a specific instance, and this actually happened a couple times, but there was one customer in particular that really stands out with me because I ended up getting on the phone with her and sort of hearing myself the detail of the situation. And it was nothing more than she had ordered some gifts for a birthday for somebody who was very sick. And it was very likely that this person who was a fan of the brand that they were ordering from, that this was going to be their last birthday. And so the person ordered, and sure enough, it was one thing that can goes wrong a lot in e-commerce business is the package got lost. They were, they obviously, the customer who bought it wanted it there before their friend who was sick birthday, and the tracking suddenly stopped for 2 or 3 days, and they were really concerned. And first, the issue at hand was they were dealing with an agent who they didn't the customer hadn't told them exactly what was going on yet, and frankly sometimes it was a package that was going from the west coast to the east coast, so it's not unusual for them to the tracking to show gaps of 2 or 3 days while it's in transit, but customers don't necessarily know this. So the customer wasn't feeling that the agent understood the gravity of the situation, even though the customer hadn't told the agent the gravity of the situation. And so the customer was feeling not paid attention to. And when they got the answer of, oh, it's normal for a package, they weren't really feeling that, right? That wasn't enough because of the gravity of the situation. So it ended up going to me. And then I got on the phone and I kind of repeated what the original agent said, in the sense of like, this is a normal thing, a gap in it. And then the customer came clean with me about what the situation was. And I said, got it. I totally hear this is now urgent for me. And I said, I'm going to call you back. I think I told them like in 3 or 4 hours, and I'm going to get in touch with the courier to see if there's anything from their end that makes it look like we're in trouble, like that this is potential trouble. I said, give me 4 hours. Luckily, the courier got back to me in 2 hours, and I was able to get back to them very quickly, and there was no issue. And then, actually, if I remember correctly, the package actually ended up getting to them the next day. So there was this sort of strange gap that appeared in the tracking, but it actually wasn't a problem. But my point in sharing the story is to say that when once you hear from the customer that for them, this package or whatever the situation is more urgent than maybe originally led on, you have to up that level of empathy, right? So stage one in this example was, oh, I'm sorry you haven't got the package yet and you're worried about the shipping, but this is actually quite normal. We see this every day. You should be okay. There's no reason to think that there's a problem. And you know what? I'll keep my eye on this package, and if there's any problem, I'll alert you. But you should be in good shape to, well, this is actually much more urgent. The customer spills the beans, and we move to the level of, got it. I totally hear you loud and clear. This is a wonderful thing you're doing to your friend. I'm on it. I'm going to be your guy or your gal, and you're going to hear from me in 4 hours, right? That's my placement message that we talked about earlier. And you make sure you get back to them in that 4 hours, even if it's only with another placement, right? Whatever it is, or maybe it's coming to the end of the shift, you haven't gotten an answer, and you say, I have passed this on to, this is the name of the agent, they are following this, and they will get back to you in another 4 hours. So you just make sure that you raise the level of empathy to the level of urgency. Raise the level of empathy and compassion to the level of urgency. Start with it and raise it as the urgency goes up.
Awesome. Brooks, thank you so much for sharing those nuggets. I Every time I speak with
Sure.
you, I feel like I'm a student listening to a teacher, and it's always a great experience to hear from you. Thank you for taking the time today. So, for all our viewers, today we explored the intricacies of crisis management in customer support with Brooks Singer. Um, Everything from building resilience in support teams to leveraging technology for effective response. There is much to learn from Brooks' wealth of experience. Yeah, so for all of the viewers, please subscribe to our podcast CX Marvels to chime into Brooks' insights and the nuggets that he shared. And yeah, look forward to seeing you again, Brooks. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Great speaking with you as always.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Brooks.
Take care, everyone.